welcome to Good Morning Transfers. Now, Liverpool haven't had a huge amount of luck in the transfer window in recent weeks, but are things about to change? News of 2 potential incomings on the way. We'll also hear from the Arsenal boss, Mikel Arteta, and there's an update on Chelsea's attempt to sign Michael Olise and Romeo Lavia. We'll do so in the company of Flex, Harriet Pryor and James Savundra. Great to have you with us. How are you all?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Yeah. Yes, all good. We'll start with Liverpool then. It's been a turbulent window for the club after missing out on several targets. But is that about to end? Liverpool have made a bid for Japan international and Stuttgart captain Wataru Endo. He'll have his medical today ahead of a deal which could rise to just over £21 million with bonuses. So a defensive midfielder and a centre-back. Is this 2 for the price of 1, James?
Well, I think they're getting something which is completely different to what they were looking at initially in the window with Moises Caicedo and Romeo Lavia, not least because of the different age profile, with Endo being 30 years of age. But he could be the player that Liverpool need right now because there is a huge hole in that team, which we saw at the weekend against Chelsea without Fabinho and Jordan Henderson. You only need to ask our colleague Kevin Hatchard about Endo, a man who knows all there is to know about Bundesliga, to know he is somebody that Liverpool fans should be quite excited about. He tackles until he drops. He's got great energy, a proper warrior and a leader. I think leadership is what Liverpool need at the moment. They've lost so much experience in the summer window already. And Dan O'Hagan, he commentates on the Bundesliga. He said he'll be a terrific asset, a running monster. So he's actually spent the last 2 seasons trying to keep Stuttgart in the Bundesliga. His stats are pretty impressive there. You can see what Liverpool are getting for their money. And now he's going from competing at the bottom of the Bundesliga to competing at the top of the Premier League. So that'll be a different challenge for him. I think it could be quite a smart move. It goes against what Liverpool have done in recent transfer windows. He's not their usual type of signing. I don't think he's plan A, plan B or even plan C. But he could be what they need right now. I think it's low risk with a fee, which could rise to £20 million.
Harriet, is this relief for Liverpool fans? There's a slight concern that Chelsea might hijack the deal last minute.
I think there's always a concern, isn't there? I was on here last Friday when there was jubilation about Caicedo for Liverpool fans, and that quickly turned very different. But it does look like now that this is going to get over the line. It's come completely out of nowhere. This is a new name, not a player that Liverpool have been linked with throughout the transfer window. It is a very different style of signing, and I think you mentioned that there. He's 30 years old. It's a bit of a departure from the other kind of players Liverpool have been going for. Caicedo, obviously Lavia, 19 and 21 years of age. So I wonder if it is a little bit more of a stopgap solution. Liverpool have been looking for that area because it's really crucial to how they play, that defensive number 6 role. We saw, as you mentioned there, James, in the game against Chelsea. We've also seen throughout pre-season that Liverpool are really getting overexposed in that defensive position. As soon as one ball goes over the top and the full-backs, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson, are pushed higher up the pitch, it's a massive gap in behind and it's really difficult for anyone coming in to fulfil that position. I have slight concerns about the fact that it is such a big jump up and it is such an important position for Liverpool. Will he be able to adapt quickly? Will he be able to slot in straight away? But like James mentioned, he has got that leadership. He is good in a tackle. He's very good at ball recovery. He's very good at retaining possession, does have those leadership figures. So potentially an exciting signing for Liverpool. But yeah, that age profile may be something that slightly concerns fans.
And Sky in Italy are also reporting that Liverpool have held talks with Fiorentina via intermediaries over the potential signing of Sofian Amrabat. Is he the type of player they need, and how would he fit in the team, Harriet?
Yeah, so I'm actually quite surprised that he's not a player that Liverpool have been linked with earlier in the window. There was a lot of talk about him potentially going to Manchester United, and for Liverpool fans, they were looking at this player thinking 26 years old, would be able to slot straight in probably to that starting 11, can clearly handle pressure, is clearly very good in various different attributes, and you can think of some of those there. I think one of the things he's very good at is picking out a long pass, his passing accuracy, a long range. He's very good in a tackle. He's very good at disrupting opposition play, the distribution. And another thing we like to talk about a lot is how good he was, of course, in that World Cup. He ran the most distance of any player in that World Cup. He's clearly a very hard-working player, and that's exactly what Klopp, I think, will have identified, will have seen, will have thought we can get the best out of him. Like I mentioned, 4 years younger than Endo, the other target that seems to be coming up. So I wonder if both of those together might make sense. They might complement each other quite nicely, be able to split the game time. I think this would be a really clever signing, particularly at the kind of price that's being spoken about, because it's not Caicedo numbers, Lavia numbers even. It does seem to be at that slightly lower price point. He's proven, I think he'd do a really good job, and yeah, has a lot of the attributes that would be perfect for that defensive midfield role at Liverpool.
Well, let's take a look at how Amrabat's stats compare to Fabinho and Jordan Henderson, who left the club earlier in the window. Flex, looking at these stats, is he an upgrade?
I think in some areas you can say he is. For sure, he's a player who has very, very similar attributes to both Henderson and Fabinho in different ways. If you're talking about the distance that he can actually cover, if you're talking about how good his passing accuracy stats are very, very similar. Interceptions as well. So he aligns with what Jurgen Klopp wants, and he aligns with what Liverpool have just lost in a prime Henderson and a prime Fabinho. I know we can argue, are those two players that have left in Henderson and Fabinho at the levels that they were during that prime Klopp era? Probably not. But in terms of where Jurgen Klopp wants Liverpool to get back to, he certainly has many of those attributes. I think in terms of getting around the pitch and leaving absolutely everything on it and being extremely mobile, he definitely ticks that. You know, if you're looking at prime Jordan Henderson in the engine room, that's exactly what he does. A lot of cover for Trent Alexander-Arnold, which you stated when he pushes forward. That's prime Henderson filling in that role and can also get about the pitch. Interceptions and breaking up play. A prime Fabinho is exactly that. That's exactly what he was fantastic at. It looks like maybe in the back end of his reign at Liverpool, that looked like it was kind of missing a little bit from how good he used to be. And it's funny how things change so quickly, because as a Manchester United fan, you're linked with this player for the whole of the summer, like has happened with Moises Caicedo and Lavia. You get a little bit attached and you're trying to think it'll be perfect for us. And then now I think the reports that there's been talks through intermediaries for Sofia and Amrabat will definitely put Manchester United fans on alert, because this is a player that Eric Ten Hag could do with. This is a player that clearly Jurgen Klopp can do with, in addition to Endo as well. So definitely fits the profile. And, you know, having been at the World Cup as well, look, you can never take just the snapshot of the World Cup, but you can get a good inkling as to how good a player is, especially on the world stage. And I covered Morocco from start to end and went to all of their games out there in Qatar. He was unbelievable. After the first few games, and I had my eye on him, then he's your player. I'm like, who's that guy? And then you see him as they went. You know, he was fantastic against Spain. If you look at the semi-final against France, he was going toe-to-toe with Mbappe, crunching into tackles, really being a leader for that Moroccan side that did so well. So yeah, a massive signing potentially for Liverpool or Manchester United.
I think the big question mark that a lot of Liverpool fans will have as this drags on and more names seem to be coming up and there's no solidified links apart from Endo obviously last night, will be how was Fabinho allowed to leave without a direct replacement coming in? What Liverpool used to be so good at was really getting all their business done behind the scenes, no one really hearing about a deal until the final stages and when it was all done and dusted. And arguably, to be fair, they did that with McAllister and also Szoboszlai earlier on in the window. But this defensive midfield position, Fabinho, yes, an unexpected bid came in. I don't think Liverpool would ever have expected to get around the £40 million mark for a player that was coming probably to the end stages of his career at Liverpool. They had to take that opportunity. But allowing him to go without having at least a set list of replacement names to come in, it does feel like a bit of a change in direction for Liverpool. And a lot has been spoken, actually, about the behind-the-scenes ongoings at the club and the fact that Julian Ward, who was the sporting director for a season, departed. They brought Jörg Schmacker in on a kind of temporary basis. Is that causing a little bit of turmoil? The early signs in the transfer window pointed in the other direction. Business was done quickly, it was done smoothly, really good targets that were identified and brought in. But now the longer this does drag on, the more question marks will be raised by Liverpool fans about their transfer ongoings and whether things are running smoothly behind the scenes as they should be.
But if they do get these signings over the line, do you think the Liverpool fans will be satisfied? Is that enough in this window?
I think they'll still look at the central defensive area and think they need one more player in that area. And maybe that's another frustration, because while all the talk has been in midfield and making sure they get reinforcements and rebuild in that area, actually the defensive area is also a priority. If you look at someone like Virgil van Dijk, if he gets injured at the moment, there's not really a high enough option that could play over a long period of time that would keep Liverpool at a level of success. I mean, Joel Matip, obviously a good option, Joe Gomez as well. But could they play over a sustained period and keep Liverpool competitive? I'm not entirely sure now. And then on the other side as well, Konate, he's so crucial now because with Trent pushing forward, Konate is essentially covering at right back, covering on the right-hand side of central defence, often even moving into midfield. There is no other player that can do that in the Liverpool squad. So I think that, yes, they need a couple more midfielders, even in central defence. But that might be one, it looks like, that has to wait until January because there's only a couple of weeks left and quite a lot of work to do.
Yeah, not long to go now, and loads happening this morning. Newcastle United have made a permanent offer for Chelsea defender Lewis Hall. The offer is under consideration. Chelsea are thought to value Hall in the region of £30 million. And an update to bring you on Romeo Lavia. He's now completed his Chelsea medical. A formal announcement of his transfer from Southampton expected soon ahead of that £58 million move. And we'll be discussing both of those moves later on. But let's get to Arsenal now, because manager Mikel Arteta has just been speaking to the media this morning. He hasn't ruled out more signings following the injury to defender Jurrien Timber.
Outgoings as well.
I'm more thinking about the resources that we have within the team, to keep doing what we want to do. But it's true that he was giving us very different things in terms of what we could do in both sides. But again, it's things that happened, and we have to be prepared for that.
Is it a benefit for an opportunity, shall I say, for a player like Kieran Tierney now to potentially have an opportunity in the first team?
It's an opportunity for everybody. And we're going to need everybody, and everybody is going to be important, and the numbers that we have in the squad, especially in those positions, are more limited now, so yeah, everybody has to be ready.
What is the situation with Kieran then, because he was left out of the squad against Nottingham Forest? Is he still part of your plans?
Well, he played the final, no? So a player that plays 5 days before in the final, it is part of the plans for sure.
But was he disappointed to be left out of the first Premier League game of the season?
I hope so, yes.
Moving on to an incoming, David Raya joining. You must be really pleased to get him in. I know it's a player you have been looking at for quite a few years. What can he bring your squad?
Better qualities for our game model, very simple. And we want 2 players per position that they can do that. And you saw what happened to Jurrien. It can happen to our goalkeeper. It happened to Courtois. So you need to be prepared. Because the question would be, and what is the 2 goalkeepers of this size? Yeah. And if he would sustain, Aaron would sustain on a cruciate, then what do you say? You then change the thing. So we have to be prepared, we have to be proactive, and we have 2 excellent goalkeepers now that fit exactly what we want in our model. So I'm very happy with that.
Is there a number 1?
In any position? No. 9, 7, 11, 6, goalkeeper? No, there isn't.
Do you feel if the transfer window were to close tomorrow, you'd be confident with the defensive players you've got that you could challenge for the title again this season?
Well, we didn't plan, obviously, with this injury, so we have to assess now what the options are, what the best way to get the best out of the players that we have, because as I said, my biggest challenge now is to get the best of the players that we have. I cannot control anything that is not here, and we are always open, and we have to be always open to react if something happens, not only with an injury but with the market as well, and that's what we are doing.
So Jurrien Timber out for a lengthy period. Flex, how big a blow is that for Arsenal?
Yeah, it's a huge blow. He's such an adaptable player, can play he can play anywhere across the back 4, left back, right back, centre half with ease. And he had a really good pre-season, really good in the Community Shield. Was playing fine up until that moment as well, and it's a massive, massive blow. He's just got there, full of anticipation, and for what he gives Arsenal, in his strength, his quickness, his football IQ, he's really good on the ball. Coming from that school of Ajax, playing under Erik ten Hag as well, known him very, very well, and that's a huge blow for Arsenal. Of course, there's players who can step in. James was talking to him about Kieran Tierney and Zinchenko on the way back, and other fullback options there, but I dare say none quite like him. There was a reason why Arsenal went for him, and the reason why he wasn't just on the periphery. He was straight in ahead of those guys. So that is a big miss, and it just goes to show ACL injuries at the moment, or big significant injuries. Look at Tyrone Mings, Buendia, and Nkunku out for a lengthy period of time. It really is. It throws your preparation not out the window, but it really does make you have to worry about how you've prepared for in pre-season, and now all of a sudden you've got to be ready to try something else. So massive blow for Arsenal. But I think Mikel Arteta, as he said there, he will have confidence in some of the players that he's got, Zinchenko more than capable, of course. Arguably the starting left back when he's fit. Kieran Tierney been on the periphery, but has shown on more occasions that he's capable of coming in there and doing a solid job. Different to the likes of Timber, different to the likes of Zinchenko in terms of on the ball, inverting as a left back into central midfield. Maybe not quite his forte, but if you're playing for Mikel Arteta, the demands are high, and he will place that upon him.
I think it's important to state that Arsenal's team is stronger and the squad is stronger than last season. When Tomiyasu and Saliba got injured, their season completely fell apart from a defensive point of view, as you saw them give away those goals at Southampton, West Ham and Liverpool as well at Anfield. That's when things started to change for Arsenal. But I think now they do have positions. They have competition for places in every position now. So it does mean that Zinchenko may get more opportunities. Tierney might be called upon. I think that's one thing that Arsenal have done really well in recent windows. Every single window they've got stronger as a side. Maybe, in my opinion, there's a bit too much competition for place when it comes to the goalkeeping situation. But now in every single area of the pitch, if there is a long-term injury, like there is to Timber, I know Arteta said they're open to looking in the transfer window, but it's not as harsh a blow as it would have been in recent seasons.
We just heard him say there's no number one in any position on the pitch, which just shows the competition in that Arsenal squad right now. Well, it's time now for a break, but still to come on Good Morning Transfers, we'll have the latest from Chelsea and we'll also be discussing Everton. See you in a few minutes. Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. Sean Dyche has completed 4 signings so far in his first summer transfer window as Everton boss, bringing in Youssef Chermiti, Jack Harrison, Arnaud Danjuma and Ashley Young. So let's get the fans' perspective on their business so far and speak to Barry Cass from Toffee TV. Barry, thank you for coming on Good Morning Transfers. So 4 players in. Are you happy with the business so far?
Happy with who they've brought in, but there's still one big glaring miss for Everton, and that is a centre forward. We saw that again at the weekend, and that'll be the one that not only me but most Evertonians are looking and reading and checking every day if Everton have been able to get one through the door.
You have been trying to sign Wilfred Gnonto from Leeds, but looks like that one won't happen with Leeds unwilling to sell. Are you disappointed you haven't got that one over the line?
Yeah, in terms of he's obviously a target Everton have identified and have been chasing for some time. I'm not convinced it's over. I'm not convinced that because Leeds don't want to sell at the moment, it won't happen. We've seen that already in this transfer window. Things like, Moises Caicedo and people like that, where these transfers have took many twists. But one thing is important with this transfer. Yes, Everton have identified them as one of their main targets, and the player has quite clearly indicated he wants to move and come to Everton. But at some stage, there'll be a point where Everton have to move on if they can't do the deal with Leeds. Leeds have obviously got an evaluation on the player, and until Everton meet it, I think this is going to drag on. I just read something from Italy saying Leeds won a little bit more than Everton's latest offer, so to speak. So we'll see whether that one gets done.
Barry, you said they desperately need a centre forward. What other areas need strengthening, do you think?
Well, quite clearly they want another wide man. The centre forward is the big one. We saw at the weekend, Everton had so many opportunities to win that game and were caught with a sucker punch, really, from just wasting chances. And we've needed a striker for 2 years. Dominic Calvert-Lewin's had a terrible, terrible injury record over those 2 years, and the club have just not brought in a player who is capable of putting the ball in the net on a regular basis, and certainly someone that plays in the style of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So that is one big glaring miss, and that's what Everton have got to correct, the recruitment team. If you're asking me to be maybe a little bit greedy, I'd like probably another centre-back in as well to add competition to the centre-backs. Obviously lost Yerry Mina and Connor Cody, and Mason Holgate's looks to be leaving the club as well. So, a forward, a winger and possibly another centre-back.
A forward, a winger, centre-back on your wish list then. What about outgoings, Barry? Demarai Gray's been linked with a move away. Do you think you can keep hold of him?
I don't think the club are bothered about keeping hold of him, to be honest. He's not been included in any of the pre-season games. The manager is very evasive when asked about him, just keeps saying, he's not fit yet. We know Fulham are very interested. Crystal Palace have been linked with him as well. There's apparently been lots of interest from Saudi Arabia, which is not a surprise. They seem to be buying everyone. So it's whether or not the football club want to keep him. I don't think they do. I think the club want an offer that they deem to be good enough to let him go, and a lot of clubs are like this. And I think you guys at Sky Sports News and Sky Sports Football are going to have a very busy last couple of weeks, it seems.
Yeah, we certainly will. Barry, what are your hopes for the season then? If the transfer window ended today, are you confident that Everton would stay up?
Confident might be pushing it a little bit. I would hope that, again, listen, I said this last season and Dominic Calvert-Lewin got injured again. If Dominic Calvert-Lewin could stay fit, I think Everton would be fine this season. We brought in Youssef Chermiti from Sporting Lisbon. He's only Sporting Club of Lisbon. He's only a young striker, so we can't put too much pressure on him. But no, if the window's shut without Everton having another striker, I would be worried. The goals just aren't in the rest of the squad if Dominic Calvert-Lewin's there. And I know we're trying to up that. Jack Harrison's coming, he's got a goal in him, but he's not going to be fit for another 3 weeks or so. So we definitely need a centre forward. So no, if it did shut today, I would be very concerned that we haven't addressed a problem that has been ongoing for 2 years now.
And I know he missed a lot of chances, but good to see Neal Maupay at least getting in the right positions at the weekend, which we maybe didn't see at the start of last season.
Yeah, you know what he did? He got himself into those areas, but it just hasn't happened for Neal Maupay. I think that's 29 games for Everton now and 1 goal. the goal probably looks tiny to him. It just some forwards go to clubs and for whatever reason the goals seem to get smaller and they don't have a good time or don't settle. I don't think Everton play to Neil Maupay's style either really, but we need someone who can put the ball in the net on a regular basis. And I think Neil Maupay looks more comfortable as a second striker, so to speak, rather than Everton's main focal point of attack.
Yeah, he looked very frustrated on Saturday at Goodison Park. Well, Barry, great to get your thoughts. We'll see you soon on Good Morning Transfers.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
We'll have news of another potential outgoing at Chelsea next, involving Lewis Hall as a bid comes in for the defender. More on that next. Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. Now we heard from Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta earlier on, and our reporter James Green was putting the questions to him. We can speak to him live now at Arsenal's training ground. Good morning, James. So Arteta made it quite clear how much of a blow it will be losing Jurrien Timber for several months, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. It is a big blow for Arsenal, this injury, an ACL injury. He's due to have an operation in the next couple of days before starting and conducting his rehabilitation. Now, before the press conference, I was speaking to the medical department here at Arsenal, and they were giving me some clarity surrounding the injury. Now, if you remember rightly, back to Saturday, Timber had the injury in the first half. They assessed him in at half-time, but he still went out to play about 5 minutes of the second half before coming off. Now, there has been a few questions asked as to why Arsenal put him back out on the pitch if he had such a serious knee injury. Now, the club say they went through all the processes, all the protocols on his knee. For Timber himself, he didn't have any pain in his knee at all, and they decided as a group that he was fine to carry on. They said that, but as soon as you have any discomfort going into the second half, let us know. He did. He still felt no pain. The player still wanted to continue, and it was down to the medical department to take him off. And what they've told me is that Timber walked away. He was still walking the next day, which is really rare for an ACL injury. We saw Tyrone Mings be stretchered off for Aston Villa on the weekend with his ACL injury, but the club are saying it's just a tear in his ACL. There's no further damage to his knee. That doesn't mean that the rehabilitation won't be long. It'll still be quite long term, but it's not as severe an ACL injury as it could have been. So maybe slightly a positive take on it, but a player is going to be out for still some time, and it is a big blow to Arsenal's plans this season.
So he'll be out for some time, James. So do you think that injury will force them into the transfer market again?
Look, clubs have to be adaptable in today's world. Injuries happen all the time. I mean, an example, Thibaut Courtois in Spain, he gets an ACL injury, he's out for the season, they have to quickly adjust, and then they've recruited Kepa. For Arsenal, look, first and foremost, Mikel Arteta was talking about internally. What's he got at his disposal internally? We know they're quite loaded in the fullback areas, the likes of Kieran Tierney, Alexander Zinchenko, Takehiro Tomiyasu, Ben White. So they've got plenty of fullback cover, and he'll be looking there first and foremost. But the one thing he did say is you can never rule out anything in the transfer window. We have to adapt as a club, with the words he used. Now, whether that's looking at potential recruits, so we're looking at forward in January or next summer and bringing those forward, that could be a possibility, but he's not ruling anything out. One thing he did say, though, there still needs to be a bit of movement out of the club. The squad is still overinflated, so expect maybe movement out the door first before they look at bringing in another player. So I wouldn't rule it out, Alex, is what I'm saying.
Wouldn't rule anything out in this transfer window, James. Thank you very much. Well, let's get to Chelsea now, and there could be 2 further incomings before the end of the week. Romeo Lavia has completed his medical. A formal announcement of his transfer from Southampton is expected soon. The deal is worth £58 million. Now, he's only 19 years old, and there's so much competition in that Chelsea midfield now. Harriet, do you think he'll get enough minutes to justify that move?
Well, that's a big question mark now, isn't it? Caicedo went to Chelsea, and then a lot of people were saying, well, surely Lavia won't follow suit now, because on paper, externally, you'd think the two would fulfil similar roles. I know different styles of player and different attributes, but in terms of how they fit in at Chelsea, you'd think they played the same position. If Pochettino decides to stick with a 4-2-3-1 system, you'd think that Caicedo, the fee they've spent on him, will start alongside Fernandes. Can you see a world where they'd push Fernandes a little bit further up the pitch and you'd bring Caicedo and Lavia in to play alongside each other? Absolutely. I think that would actually work quite well against certain opposition as well. So it gives them that adaptability. For me, I don't think a player of 19 years old would go to Chelsea when he had other options on the table unless he was given that real guarantee of game time. He knows now his development is really skyrocketing. He needs that regular game time. He needs to have a bit of consistency in his routine and how often he's playing. So I'm sure that Chelsea would have given him some sort of guarantees that this is how much he'll be playing, and also that they spent a lot of money on him as well, so they don't want him there to just sit on the bench. But Chelsea aren't in European competitions this season. They are just focusing on the Premier League and cup competitions. Are those opportunities going to be there? Arguably not. But one thing you would say is Fernandes, 22, Caicedo, 21, Lavia, 19. Chelsea are really building now for the next decade, arguably. They're looking at options for the future. They're building ahead of time.
Long contracts as well.
Exactly, with the long contracts as well, and really locking these talented players in. So maybe Lavia will think, I want to go and prove myself. I might not get all the opportunities next season, but hopefully will they be back in Europe, and then after that I can get the game time as well. So yeah, all about his development now, and hopefully he will get more game time than a lot of us expect, because on paper it does look a bit difficult.
Meanwhile, Chelsea are yet to hold talks with Crystal Palace forward Michael Elise. They have, though, met his £35 million release clause. Chelsea now waiting to begin discussions with the player and conduct a medical. He is injured at the moment, out for a few more weeks, so no real rush, James. But what's the latest on this?
Well, it's quite an interesting one. As you say there, Chelsea have yet to actually hold talks with Elise after meeting the release clause. We think that's around £35 million. There were some reports that emerged suggesting that Crystal Palace were pretty unhappy with Chelsea's conduct, but our understanding is Chelsea are totally comfortable with the way they've dealt with things. Now, Chelsea are waiting for the green light to begin discussions around personal terms and to have a medical. But as you mentioned, there's not so much of a rush when it comes to Elise playing for Chelsea, because he tore his hamstring during the European Under-21 tournament, so he's likely to be out until the end of September. But I think when you look at Elise's stats, you can understand why Chelsea do want to sign him. They're not incredible overall when you look at that picture there. The numbers don't jump off the sheet, but he was seriously impressive last season for Crystal Palace. A side that haven't always been brilliant in front of goal. They create chances but don't seem to get on the end of them. But for 10 assists in the Premier League, only 3 players had more. That is really impressive for a side who don't really offer a huge amount in the final third. And playing with better players, you expect that he will shine and those stats will only get better and better.
He's a great option off the bench as well for Chelsea. If they're struggling at all with that finished product, he could come on. You've seen there his assist statistics are really good. He's very good at bringing in other players, linking up, making those around him better. And he's got a real confidence in his own ability. He's spoken about as quite a quiet and unassuming figure off the pitch.
Doesn't celebrate his goals, does he?
No, but whenever he's on the pitch, he seems to have the sense of...
Yeah, the explanations of the goals as well are quite limited.
He's just a chill guy.
He's a chilled out guy, but he has that sense of surety, and I think that's why he would be another good option for Chelsea as they really build out this squad and get rid of some players that maybe don't fit the mould anymore. That's a huge blow for Crystal Palace, and that's the side of it we have to consider as well. They've already lost Zaha this window. He was a key player for them. Elise, as you just mentioned there, James, was really crucial for them last year. Are they going to be able to cope without these wingers, and how will they adapt to playing, in life after these 2 players are gone? But they're probably a bit gutted that they've got that release clause at the price it is, because for a player of this value in this market, we've seen some of the fees being spoken about. They probably would have hoped they can get a little bit more for him.
So Romeo Lavia, Michael Elise, Flex, when are Chelsea finally going to call it a day and say, enough's enough, we're done, more players?
When it was in January, that was a question, and they kept going, and then surely they won't be able to sort of do this in the summer, and they've found creative and imaginative ways to make sure that they can keep investing into this squad, and Todd Boehly is doing just that. You look at the players that they brought in: Caicedo, Jackson, Disasi, Robert Sanchez came in. He was supposed to be back up to Kepa, but obviously Kepa ended up leaving, so now he's the number 1. I still think, from a Chelsea perspective, with the loss of Nkunku as well, and you saw what Jackson offered against Liverpool, looked really sharp, and he had looked sharp throughout pre-season, but they need a number 9. Maybe a more established number 9. Do they go for a stopgap? Do they go for an experienced player because they trust in Nico Jackson, and then trust when Nkunku comes back they'll be okay, even though he plays just behind? And the goalkeeper situation as well, because throughout pre-season I think it was quite clear with Mendy going to Saudi Arabia that Kepa was going to be the number 1, and like Mikel Arteta has been talking about, you have to be ready, because all of a sudden Kepa's ended up going to Real Madrid because Courtois got injured, albeit on loan. And now Sanchez, who was maybe brought in to be number 2, is now playing the games. And maybe that's not what Mauricio Pochettino wanted for this Chelsea side. So there's still time for them to do that. And also with the forward situation, you've got Baroja being tipped or linked to at least to go to Roma. So there are still some moving parts there, but they've addressed a big bulk of what they needed to, absolutely. And like Harriet says, they are massively building for the future. That has been the Chelsea model, even back in January when we saw big players come in. You forget about players like Badia Shields, not even there at the minute. Fofana, obviously long-term injury as well. So they're continuing to do that model. And I said at the time, I can see what Chelsea are trying to do. Obviously, results were really poor last year, finishing the league where they did. But you can tell that the rebuild is now kind of in a really key stage. And now they've got Pochettino at the helm. And you saw what they were about against Liverpool. They keep fine-tuning that, coupled that with they're not in Europe. They're online to actually have, in my opinion, have actually quite a successful season considering the situation they're in. So When will they stop?
When
Who
will they
knows?
They're
stop?
never going to stop. It's not over
I
yet.
think the goalkeeper situation really interesting because it looked like Sanchez and Kepa. Well, Maurizio said it in his press conference on Friday they were going to be competing, and now they had 20-year-old academy goalkeeper Lucas Bergstrom on the bench.
Exactly.
So
So
they'll
does he
definitely
want
need to
him
bring
there?
in a keeper,
Exactly.
I'm sure. Well, looks like there'll be another outgoing though at Chelsea. And Galatasaray have agreed a deal to sign forward Hakim Ziyech, and he had the first part of his medical yesterday. The club are awaiting the results before proceeding with the second part today. If all goes well, Ziyech will formally sign a contract with the Turkish champions. So there have been a lot of outgoings, James. Do you think that does justify the spending?
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like they're going to spend more than £300 million in this window. It will come close to £1 billion since the takeover. But when you look at their outgoings in this transfer window, they've already brought in around £230 million. And these are some of the selected outgoings. Plenty more players have left Stamford Bridge this summer. And they deserve credit for selling as well as they did. I think when you look at some of the fees there, that's quite impressive, especially when it comes to Mason Mount and Kai Havertz as well. And what they did well is selling these players before Maurizio started work on the 1st of July. So he avoided any awkward confrontations and situations. And that figure will increase as well once they offload Romelu Lukaku, potentially other players in this window as well. I think the question will be whether or not this is sustainable moving forward. Next summer, can they sell another £200 million worth of players to keep up with their spending, or whether they're hoping that by the end of this summer they're pretty much done and they'll have their squad in place. But they've excelled moving on players that didn't want to be there and players that aren't part of Mauricio Pochettino's plans.
Now, this is a really interesting one. Newcastle United have made a permanent offer for Chelsea defender Lewis Hall. The offer is under consideration. Chelsea are thought to value Hall in the region of £30 million. Now, he's such a versatile player. He can play left-back, he can play in the midfield, winger. Why are Chelsea letting him go?
Well, I think you need to look at Chelsea's financial picture, which we just spoke about a few moments ago, and the fact they've spent nearly £1 billion in transfer fees since the takeover. So there is a need at some stage to recoup some of the money to fit within the financial fair play guidelines. They've done well, £230 million already this summer. But from an accounting perspective, selling academy graduates like Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Mason Mount, that's our deal, because on the books, when it comes to financial fair play, they represent pure profit. So £60 million for Mason Mount, nearly £20 million for Ruben Loftus-Cheek. And that's why, from an accounting perspective, the likes of Lewis Hall, maybe, I know Chelsea fans don't want to hear this, Conor Gallagher and Trevor Chalobah, if those players leave, that is more appealing from an accounting perspective than selling some of the players that they have signed in the last couple of years.
But Chelsea fans want to keep hold of him, I'm sure. Well, it's time for a break now, but next we'll focus on Manchester United as Harry Maguire and Dean Henderson look like they'll be staying at Old Trafford. Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. We turn our attention to Manchester United now. Harry Maguire and Dean Henderson look like they will be staying at the club. Maguire's move to West Ham fell through earlier this week, while Henderson will remain in this transfer window unless a replacement becomes available. He'd been in talks with Nottingham Forest. So, Flex, what does this mean for Manchester United now?
Well, it means that in terms of more incomings, that it's increasingly difficult. It was always spoken about before the window that Manchester United would have to be disciplined in terms of FFP, and hence why we're seeing the likes of players needing to go out before other players come in at the back end of this window. From a club point of view, I think Manchester United will be happy that they got the three main targets and the three main areas of the squad addressed quite early in Rasmus Højlund as a centre forward who is partially injured at the minute on his way back, but they got him in. Mason Mount as a midfield option, and obviously Andre Onana. So those were the three main positions that Manchester United needed to sort out. But beyond that, there was always going to be a situation where we're relying on players to be sold before being brought in. But from a fan perspective, with Harry Maguire seemingly on the periphery of Erik ten Hag's plans, I know in public Erik ten Hag has spoken about Harry Maguire being able to fight for his place, and that's what he needs to do. And he's happy with him in the squad. But I think Erik ten Hag in public versus what his conversations are with the players, we've already seen from last year that they can be very different. And you've only got to look at the appearances or lack of that he's made for Manchester United to show that he's probably not going to be in the plan. So that does present a problem. And with Tom Heaton then going to get injured, that's presented a problem in terms of the goalkeeping department as well. Dean Henderson wants to play as a number one, largely injured for last year at Nottingham Forest, so that also is a problem too.
There has been a lot of talk about Scott McTominay leaving the club as well. James, can they afford to lose him without a replacement?
I don't think they should be letting Scott McTominay go unless somebody is willing to spend the reported £45 million to sign him. He played 39 times in all competitions last season, and he came on with a few minutes to go against Wolves. United really under the cosh. Only played a few minutes, but he made such a big difference from a defensive point of view. I know he's been much maligned at times. People talk about McFred, and that really was a sign and a mark of where United were at a certain period of time, a turbulent period under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But United are on the up now, and I think when you look at what United have done in the last 20 years, when they've had players like Darren Fletcher and John O'Shea, academy graduates, or players that have been there for a long period of time, driving those high standards, I think United need a player like Scott McTominay. And sometimes you don't know what you've got till you've lost them. And that's what I think was the case.
Deep, James, so deep.
But I think
Too early for this.
When you look at game week one, when you look at that first game, you sort of think, wow, United without McTominay and Fred, that midfield looked wide open with Casemiro in the position he was in. So you already think if this Mason Mount situation isn't going to work out with him playing as this number 8 with a free role with Casemiro left on his own, maybe Scott McTominay could have more of a role in that midfield just at the start of this season, because I know we don't want to draw too many conclusions on the first week, but I'm not sure that's going to work for United.
But the frustration as well, maybe from a fan perspective, would be not just the fact that, OK, Scott McTominay, maybe the skill set isn't there, but in terms of the club being able to move forward and get other targets instead of. So, like you said, for a long time, McTominay and Fred have been the linchpin of Manchester United's pivot in midfield, and it's now probably reached the expiry date. And I feel like Erik ten Hag has showed us that as soon as he came in, he brought in Eriksen and Casemiro and kind of broke up that partnership, and now wants to do so further. But I think the real frustration is, we saw from in January what Manchester United's finances were, having to get like an emergency loan for Sabitzer when Christian Eriksen got injured, and then the best part of a £4 million loan for Wout Weghorst. And he tried his best, and but some of the quality was lacking, even though he gave his all. So Manchester United's financial situation was kind of giving us an overview of what it was like then, and then with all the takeover and the uncertainty of the takeover and funds, to now be in a position where we're relying on players like Harry Maguire, Dean Henderson, Donny van de Beek, Fred, Anthony Elanga's moved on. Eric Bailly is still there, Alex Telles, maybe Brandon Williams, etc., relying on those sales directly to fund new moves. And because that isn't happening, that's where the frustrations may be coming from a fan point of view.
Overall, Harriet, do you think United can be happy with the business they've done so far?
Yeah, well, Flex touched on it earlier. They've been working with difficult FFP constraints, and they've really identified the areas of the pitch they wanted to get done very early, and they've managed to do just that. They wanted a goalkeeper who was good with the ball at his feet and who could play out from the back. They've got Onana in. They wanted another attacking option, another attacking midfielder. They got Mount in. And then actually operating in a really difficult striker market, they identified exactly who they wanted and they brought Højlund in. But like you kind of touched on there, I think what's maybe causing a little bit of frustration is they haven't managed to refresh when it comes to squad depth. So the starting 11, I think they'll be happy with, and the players they brought in, but shifting some of the players out that don't fit the mould of how the team wants to push forward and bringing in new players in that sense might feel like the bit of frustration there. Are you happy? Do you feel happy?
Do you know what? There is, because you know what? Every set of fans know what they need and want it all, and we understand that. But
you're happier than this time last year, is what I would say.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're more positive.
The main areas that needed addressing, obviously, Rasmus Højlund is a very, very young prospect, but it's something that Manchester United can get their teeth into. He's a project striker. So much money's been wasted prior to this on maybe more experienced strikers with not much sell-on value that haven't worked. So it's about time Manchester United did something different in that department. It's just annoying that he's injured at the minute, ironically. But
Harry Kane would have been nice.
Harry Kane would have been nice, but Manchester United will push back on that and say what the whole package was for that. Could they have afforded it, which is probably for another show. But to answer your question, yes. And I think Onana is absolutely transformative as well. We've seen that even in the first game without the penalty incident.
Right, we have just enough time to touch on West Ham. It's been a busy few weeks for them. They're now in advanced talks with Stuttgart over the signing of defender Konstantinos Mavropanos. So we're told the clubs are nearing an agreement. So they missed out on Harry Maguire. Flex, how does this signing compare? You excited about it?
Different to what they would have looked at in Harry Maguire. You know, me and James were talking about as well. We was all talking about this, about what West Ham's centre-back options actually are, and would Mavropanos come in and displace the likes of Zuma and Aged, and, you know, probably not. But maybe after going for Harry Maguire, David Moyes has looked at it a little bit differently and sort of maybe looked for the reinforcement side of things. Bono has had his list of injuries and struggled to keep fit. Look, he did struggle at his time at Arsenal, probably didn't go the way that he wanted it to go. But maybe West Ham looking at it slightly differently because they missed out on Harry Maguire. So I think David Moyes has seen something in him that he thinks can help them. But I don't think he necessarily comes in and starts like I think maybe Harry Maguire would have done.
And West Ham are expecting an improved offer from Manchester City as well for midfielder Lucas Paquetá. It's thought West Ham will only begin to consider offers in the region of £85 million. I mean, it's obvious that Lucas Paquetá was going to have his head turned by the treble winners. We'll talk all about Lucas Paquetá at midday. But the show is over for now. Good Morning Transfers returns tomorrow, though, at 9 a.m. And then Transfer Talk is back at midday today. And the Transfer Show is here at 5 and 7 o'clock. Next, it's the Football Show. Stay with us. That's after the break.